Hey, Scott Yard and Mark Warner here for Jancast number 115 or 115 for January 6, 2022. And I think we need to take these off because we are in office, but we're going to talk about these in a second because we have two masks on, right?
Well, one is not enough.
So how was your holiday break there, Mark? The last show we had was before Christmas and New Year's and all that.
Last show we had was last year.
Yeah.
So first show of the year. Nice little break time.
Yep.
I think a lot of folks, not just us, but a lot of folks needed a little bit of downtime, chill time, spend some time with their family. It's been a pretty stressful time in the annals of human history. Right? It's been pretty stressful. Yeah. And I think one of the big things people are going to be talking about a year or two from now is, the psychological effect of all this kinds of stress on folks. You hear about increases in certain types of crimes and things like that. And I think it's really just because people get feeling like they're caged up, at some point you get cabin fever and different people release it in different ways.
Well, I was very fortunate that I was able to take home the bottle of the Eric's Refresh, so our family was able to use the antiseptic mouthwash that we talked about in the previous show. And I got to tell you, we're having a hard time keeping this in stock. That's all I got to say. For those of you that missed it, you got to go back and listen to show number 114 to get the full rundown on this miracle product. All I got to say. Back to the mask. So what's going on, Mark? I mean, I thought a mask is a mask, right?
Well, there were some studies done early last year that was showing that things like simple cloth masks, they would show people in infrared light where they would sneeze and you could literally see the sneeze come right through a cloth mask. And, people were wearing, pulling their shirts up over their faces and pulling their t-shirts up, and none of that was really doing what they were trying to prevent, which was getting aerosolized droplets of infectious agents in the air, right? So they've done all these studies, and obviously the N95 and KN95, which is the disposable version, they're made with multiple layers so that they catch stuff. You and I wear these lined masks.
Yeah, there's 3 layers in this.
Yeah, so these are designed to do what really what a single layer cloth mask may not be able to do. These studies were put together by the Mayo Clinic, and they released all the information last week. So it gets us thinking about not just are people wearing masks, but are they wearing masks that are doing anything? Yeah. You and I used to joke about, going in somewhere and you see people wearing masks like this, like
they've gone to the trouble of having a mask around
doing
their face,
a lot of good,
but they don't even wear it right. It's like, come on, dude. Really?
So what's going to happen is everybody's going to get into multi-layered double masking, and all double masks are going to be on their chin. Like, all right, I got my 2 masks on. I should be good, right? But anyway.
Oh, it's winter. It'd be a good neck warmer if you wear it down low enough.
There you go. But it's getting so serious now with there were over 1 million COVID cases reported on January 3rd in a day. 1 million.
Yeah.
So the scary thing is Omicron is highly, highly contagious, and perhaps not as lethal as Delta the variant, but the other side of it is if it is less lethal, like maybe by a third, but it infects 4 or 5 times as many people, you still end up with more people ending up in the hospital, not less, So that's the big fear that everybody seems to have. And that is, what shut down the world's economy back in the beginning of last year was
Yeah.
that the hospitals filled and there were people dying in the hallways, right?
Yeah.
So if we're all quite hopeful that this is less lethal, and as a result, we don't get to that breaking point of the healthcare system,
Yeah. Yeah.
because that's what the driver was last time. Certainly, you and me and our customers and clients and friends, nobody wants to see the economy shut down again.
Right. Right.
But the driver isn't going to be our opinion. It's going to be what happens at the healthcare level.
Yeah. And I think it was 95% of the cases, the new cases are of the Omicron variant. So I don't know. I guess there was another one. I didn't want to put it in the show notes, but there's a rumor of another one that's out there. But we'll talk about that at the next show.
Well, really, what they're saying is the idea of a coronavirus creating variants isn't new. It happens with traditional flus each year. The flu is a little different than the year before.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm expecting that we're gonna be hearing about variants for a long time.
Yeah.
But the good news is, if you study history of viruses, hello, that as they evolve with a single-mindedness, become more contagious, and in the process they tend to lose their lethality. So this might end up being something we live with, like we live with the common cold or the annual flu. So you go out and you get your flu shots once a year instead of just flu shot once a year. So you get your regular flu and your COVID flu shot once a year, and might be something we live with for decades to come.
Yeah.
But,
well, I mean, the hope is the news I've heard out there is that potentially the new variant could wind down rather quickly. That's what they're seeing in South Africa, at least, that maybe by the end of January, middle of February, we might be over this huge spike that we've seen, which that would be fantastic if it is.
Well, there's another thing we can hope for, and that is that global warming will develop to the point where the average mean temperature on planet Earth is 167 degrees.
Well, that article you found, I think, is brilliant, that Ford actually is designed to enhance software enhancements. So give them the details on it. So you get your temperature up to a certain level for 15 minutes or something, right?
Yeah, well, there's different temperature levels and different times that required at that temperature level. But Ford created an Interceptor police car that once you lock up and leave it, because it wouldn't be good if you stayed in it, you hit a button and it actually activates the heating elements inside that car and heats it up to 167 degrees for 30 minutes. And after 30 minutes at 167 degrees, it's completely undetectable.
Yeah, that's pretty cool use of technology. And as you know, I'm a pretty good. I think I'm a pretty good cook, and I noted that temperature range, you could cook chicken breasts like you do in a sous vide, but you have to run it for about an hour at that temperature. So you just keep it going a little longer. Next thing you know, you come out and you got a nice chicken sandwich.
So, right? with no COVID in it.
With no COVID. So the best of both worlds.
So they were actually talking about, when they were building this Ford car, that that Death Valley gets up to like 133, on its hottest days. And, they were finding if they could take that temperature up above 133 for 15 minutes or longer on the inside of these interceptors, it literally was a COVID killer. Yeah. So that's pretty fascinating. It's who'd have thought that that's where this was going to go. But
well, the cool thing is, we talked about on the last show and the previous one about the electrostatic sprayers and the whole wrap. Do they wrap? Do they not wrap? Well, this kind of eliminates that whole thing, because it's going to essentially kill off everything in the car. As long as the whole thing gets to those temperature levels, right?
Well, it leads me to wonder if Ford is exploring this with their cars. Is Boeing going to end up exploring this with their aircraft? Seriously, I think it actually is something that might become newsworthy in a year or so.
Yeah, take a little bit longer to heat up a whole airplane to 167, and then you have to cool it down before you let the people in it, right? At least on the police thing, you
Only
can just open the windows up.
you only have to cool it down before you let the nice people in it. You know, the hostile, angry ones you can send in right away.
It might help the seating, right? Everybody will get on last instead of trying to sneak on first.
Yeah,
Right?
but it would be welcome to some of us knowing that, you know, at that
Yeah,
level, nothing's hiding from heat, right?
yeah,
It's
yeah,
not like you got to worry about a wrap or a process that's being followed. It's not really a human element involved there.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
just purely heat. So that's kind of cool. And I guess to tail up on that, the New York City Police Department, Los Angeles Police Department, and several others have ordered cars with these
Yeah.
COVID killing heating elements. Kind of cool.
Yeah, neat. But we still have all of our supply chain disruptions that have come down the road. We've been talking about since this whole thing started. Probably worse now than it's been other than selective things. But we've got raw materials continue to go up, packaging going up. Freight cost is one of the biggest things, which that's not only the freight for receiving those materials in, but for a company like Bullen to ship out, the freight cost is astronomical because of the lack of drivers and everything else involved. So we're kind of going through some of the same thing, and it's in some cases it's actually getting worse.
Well, when you
Versus
think about it, you know, we've kind of mentioned that there's raw material increases and there's packaging increases, and all of them are also impacted by the increased freight costs, right?
yeah,
So even at the raw material level, they're bringing things in and they're shipping things out. They've got that heightened cost with the freight issues.
yeah,
Packaging people are dealing with the same thing. It ends up going to folks like the Bullen companies and others that are producing products to be used by the public.
yeah,
And the freight is in there. So, I mean, a single drop of a raw material could get freighted around 5 or 6 times
yeah, yeah,
before it ends up in the hands of the end user. And, you know, each time that gets freighted around or shipped, you know,
yeah.
it's
Good
got that
point.
heightened charge on it. So there's a ripple effect.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we're
So I'm
still
glad
making the
you, when I
products.
said ripple effect, you didn't give me one of these. So.
Well, we're still making disinfectants, and there's still a need for them. You found one little article there about the fact that we need better strategies for school disinfection,
Yeah, so they
yeah,
actually surveyed over 1,100 schools to figure out what was going on, how they were doing things, and overwhelming results of the survey was that they need improvement. So it can be things like process. You know, are they providing the right amount of surface contact time with the
yeah,
disinfectants and following the labels? And it can be pretty sophisticated on the standpoint of what's the HVAC system like? Is the
mhm,
ventilation exchanging air? And, you know, these are the areas, obviously modern schools are built around that, but there's an awful lot of school buildings that were built back in the 30s and 40s and still in play. And a lot of them that didn't necessarily have some of these state-of-the-art HVAC systems for dealing with air exchanges. Hell, when I was in school, it got really hot out. They didn't turn on the AC. There wasn't any. You opened the window.
yeah, that's right. Well, maybe the good news is with the infrastructure bill going through that some of that money will trickle down to the schools for better facility maintenance and all the other stuff that goes along with it.
Yeah, and you know the other thing to be thinking about is I had this conversation last week where everybody's talking about, you know, it's spread through the air. It's an airborne pathogen. You know, it's all about indoor air quality and HVAC. And I say, you know, there's things you can control and things you can't control. And sometimes you don't really have a lot of control over the quality of the air, so you do what you can to be
Yeah,
protected, right?
yep,
On the other hand, even though uh, the most of the pathogens from COVID are not spread on surfaces, it is still a source of spread,
yeah,
and it is one we have control over
yeah,
by just being thorough in our disinfection and our process and the right chemistry. So I'm still an avid believer in the fact we need to clean and disinfect. We need to live extremely clean. Or shall we say, live in the world of extreme cleanliness,
Yes.
registered trademark. But we can control our surfaces. We can protect ourselves from the air. We got to do all of that. We can't just say, oh, it's airborne. There's nothing I need to do about surfaces. And I got into another conversation last week, Scott, where it was all about extreme cleanliness. And, if the building you're going into looks deteriorated, the floors are deteriorated, the carpet's got traffic lanes, there's spots that have obviously been there for months. And nobody's feeling very comfortable that some professional came in last night and disinfected it, right? So there's a message that we want to be able to send to folks that an area is safe by how it appears, even though you can't see bacteria and viruses. You make an assumption based on how clean things look and appear. And we've been doing this for years, Scott, as it relates to odor control.
Yeah.
You don't see odor control. It can look spotless, but if you walk into a room that stinks, you don't have the opinion that it's clean.
Yeah.
Even if there's no spots and stains anywhere. So it's the same way with pathogenic microorganisms.
Yeah. Well, we've certainly learned a lot in the last couple of years. We've said it many times. People didn't even know what dwell time was when we started into this whole thing back in 2019 and early 2020. So hopefully we've learned enough that you don't have to remember we were disinfecting groceries and stuff like that. I mean, at least we're getting smarter about it. So it should be easier, more efficient to do pathogen control like you should be doing it. And the good news to end the show is there's a report out that's showing the healthcare disinfectants and sanitizer market is going to grow over between 2022 and 2027 by 10.89%, which is a pretty big jump. So that's certainly encouraging. The market's not going to die out for disinfectants, even if we get out of this. Everybody's kind of now got it in their head what they like you were saying, the perceived cleanliness or whatever, however deep you want to get with it. So it's important that there's a huge market coming. If it's not here, well, it certainly is here already, but it's going to continue for the next 5 years or so,
or longer. I mean, may have been a culture shift.
Yeah,
in human history. Where we've shifted into this level of concern. You think back 20, 30 years ago, going to concerts, being wedged up against people. And you wonder, at what point will I be comfortable doing that again? Right.
Yeah, right.
Or ever, after what we lived through. So there's been somewhat of a culture shift going on.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be a great 2022. I'm thinking positive. 2 weeks from now, we'll report on what the count is, and I'm hoping it'll go down. And then 2 weeks after that, because we do the show every 2 weeks, hopefully the numbers will dramatically start to drop off like they're seeing in South Africa.
That would be great. I'm thinking 2022 is going to be a wonderful year. There's only one sad thing about 2022.
Yeah.
Last Tuesday on January 4th, they discontinued support of the BlackBerry.
I love my BlackBerry. Oh my God, that thing was so fantastic. And they thought, Apple came out with the iPhone. It's like, who's going to type on that? It doesn't have a real keyboard. I mean, remember you had that whole thing typing with your thumbs and stuff. I mean, oh man, I love that thing.
I remember the jealousy when you had a flip phone and you saw somebody with a BlackBerry.
Yeah, those are the good kind of, I guess that dates us a little bit, right?
Yeah, well, I saw a pretty interesting version of the iPhone that was completely flexible. You could wear it as a wristband.
Oh yeah, that'd be cool.
And it was translucent, so you could almost see through it. It was like, wow, who knows?
Well, the BlackBerry was introduced in 2013, so it lasted pretty long. I mean, almost 10 years, not quite, but almost 10 years. So if you got one, it might not work tomorrow. And on that note, thanks for tuning in, and stay tuned for future shows, and we'll be hopefully reporting on a better count in 2 weeks and another 2 weeks after that. But thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
See y'all.